All right, problem 6. They're asking us to show that triangle TSV, this one on the left, that's got to be congruent to this triangle on the right, USV. So those are the two things we're trying to show are congruent. And you can think of this problem as like the final boss. It's a hard problem. There's a lot involved in it. But still, no matter what the proof is, when solving triangle congruence proof, you're always going to follow this flow. You're always going to put the given info in the diagram. Okay, let's start there. Let's start with this midpoint. Okay, this point here, V, is a midpoint of TU, from T all the way to U. And when I see midpoint, I know midpoint makes congruent sides, right? That midpoint makes congruent sides. So I'm just going to add that in now, right now, so I don't forget, right? Here's a side fact, okay? And here's why this is kind of like a final boss in a game, the challenge mode. You've got this weird thing saying that in addition to TU, getting split by that midpoint, it's also going to do something else for us. This side TU, that symbol is perpendicular. Sometimes they'll say it as like, oh, you got an altitude. No matter if they say perpendicular or altitude, it does the same thing. They're going to give you two sides. TU is perpendicular to SV, all right, this down the middle. When they say that, that's the definition of perpendicular is that perpendicular lines create right angles. I'm just making the same size. They create right angles. And you got to ask yourself, what do you know about a right angle? What do I know about a right angle? Well, all right angles equal 90 degrees. All right. So if I've got a right angle here and a right angle here, I can say these right angles must be congruent. I can say angle TV up to S. TVS has got to be congruent to this angle here, the one on the right now. U to V turn up to S. So U, V, S. That angle. Because that's that's what right angles are. They're equal to each other. They're always 90 degrees. And the hard part is learning how to write it up. Once you see how to write it up, it's not so bad. So we've got a side, we've got an angle now, and that's the givens. We've exhausted them. There's no more givens, right? So now we're in that mode of, do I have any free facts? And yeah, I got reflexive property again. I got this line right here that goes down the middle. It's in both of our triangles that we want. And that's the third fact, side angle, side. That right angle is in between our two congruent sides. So I've got how we're going to prove it. We're going to use side angle side, and now I'm ready to write the proof. So I'll start, as I always start, with the givens. V is a midpoint of TU. That was given. 2, TU is perpendicular to SV. Right? Notice how this isn't a congruent symbol. That's not an angle fact. It's not a side fact. It's something that will get us to a side or an angle fact. And now I'm ready to reference my diagram and look at what I actually accomplished. So I think the first thing we talked about was the midpoint, namely that TV, this side here, has to be congruent to VU, this side here. So I'm going to say that, 3. Segment TV must be congruent to segment VU. And that was a consequence of midpoint. That's my reason for doing this, is the definition of midpoint. And that's a side fact. The next thing we came across was that we got right angles here, right? There and there, that's angle TVS and UVS, and we know right angles got to be congruent. So we can just cut to the chase. We can say, look, because you had perpendicular lines, that's going to tell us that these angles, TVS and angle UVS, that's going to tell us these angles have to be congruent. And the reason for this is, well, it's the definition of perpendicular. Definition of perpendicular. And I'm going to say perpendicular lines. All right, that's what perpendicular lines do. They make congruent angles. They make right angles, technically. And those right angles happen to be congruent. That's a distinguishment that we'll use later in this unit. So now I've got side angle, and the last thing is this reflexive side, SV. So the 5 SV is congruent to itself, SV. That is the reflexive property. And I am ready to wrap this up with side angle side. And I'm going to scroll up so I can see what they want me to prove. That way I don't make a mistake in copying. Triangle TSV is congruent to triangle USV, and that is because of the side angle side postulate. Alright, let's wrap it up with number 7 in the next one.